Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something pretty fascinating, intellectual overexcitability.
So
And we're going to be looking at it through the lens of this amazing Polish researcher, Kazimierz Dabrowski.
I love Dabrowski's work.
Yeah, his research on overexcitabilities, especially as they relate to people with higher IQs,
Oh,
like 130 or above, it really gives us this incredible insight into how some folks experience the world so
it
differently.
really is remarkable. We're talking about like one of 5 overexcitabilities,
Wow.
often observed in gifted individuals.
Yeah.
It's not just that they think differently. It's more like they experience the world, well, more intensely.
Intense, that's a good word for it. You know, I was just reading the Psychology Today article that you sent over, and
Oh, yeah.
the way they described it, insatiable curiosity, like laser focus.
Hmm.
It's like their brains are just always on overdrive.
Always on. It's this constant hunger for knowledge, a need to know the why behind everything.
Yeah.
They're the ones asking question after question, not letting go of a topic until they've really grasped it.
Oh, that makes so much sense. So how can we tell if someone actually has this intellectual overexcitability? Like what are the signs?
Well, it goes back to what we were just talking about,
Uh.
that curiosity, like that insatiable curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely a big one. Drawn to those big ideas, loving to explore all those different perspectives.
Yeah, I can see that. Are there other signs? Other telltale signs?
Absolutely. They tend to be super observant, picking up on those little details that other people might miss.
Oh, interesting.
And they have a real love for deep thinking,
Yeah.
analyzing every angle of a situation. They might even come across as like a little absent-minded sometimes,
Oh, yeah.
lost in thought while they're working on a problem. That classic absent-minded professor type.
You know, that's so funny you say that, because I have a friend who's always like that, and now I'm thinking,
Right.
a lot of this is kind of clicking.
It's funny, once you start learning about these concepts, you see them everywhere. But it's important to remember, though, not everyone is going to have all of these traits,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Intellectual overexcitability, it's not like a checklist. It's more like
Yeah.
a spectrum,
Mm.
just like any other personality characteristic.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. Okay, so we've talked about what it looks like, but now I'm really curious about how we can actually support someone who might be showing these signs.
Yeah,
Let's say you're a parent or a teacher. What can you actually do?
that's a key question. One of the most practical things you can do is to, well, guide their information consumption.
Okay.
We're just bombarded with information these days.
Constantly.
So helping them learn how to filter that, how to evaluate what they're taking in, I mean, that's crucial.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's not just about giving them access to information. It's about teaching them how to
Exactly.
be really discerning about.
Yes. It's like giving them a mental toolkit for navigating this, like this crazy world of information. So are they looking at a reliable research paper? Or is this just some random blog post? You know,
Right.
how do they cross-check the facts and identify those biases? These are essential skills for anyone, but especially for somebody with intellectual overexcitability.
Yeah, I love that, these practical tips. I like how you're framing it as giving them tools to empower themselves as learners.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes hand in hand with encouraging that natural curiosity, right?
Right.
Remember that Psychology Today article?
Mm-hmm.
The example about the student researching life expectancy.
Yeah. Instead of just Googling, countries with the lowest life expectancy,
Right.
the teacher guided them to ask why those countries face those particular challenges.
That's it. That's exactly what we're talking about. It's about moving beyond those surface level questions and really
Mhm.
digging into the why. This approach, it can really help them satisfy that thirst for knowledge in a meaningful way. But, there's another layer to all of this we need to talk about.
Okay.
And it can be a bit more sensitive.
Okay, I'm listening.
This intense engagement, this deep awareness that they have, it can be a double-edged sword,
Mm-hmm.
especially for younger people.
Mm-hmm.
Their sensitivity to the world's problems, the injustice, the inequality,
Ah.
even those big existential questions, it can make them more vulnerable to things like anxiety or even depression.
Oh, wow. That's a really important point to bring up. So how can we help them deal with those emotions? What can parents and educators do?
I think open and honest communication is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Creating that safe space for them to express those fears, those concerns, without any judgment.
Yeah.
It can make a huge difference.
It sounds like it's really about validating those feelings, letting them know they're not alone.
Exactly. And along with that, remembering that mental health professionals, they can play a huge role here too. Sometimes having that objective, supportive person to talk to can be so beneficial.
Hmm.
But beyond just talking, there's a really powerful way to help them channel that awareness into something positive.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about that.
Well, think about it. These individuals, they have this deep understanding of the world's complexities
Hmm.
and a strong desire to actually make things better.
Yeah.
So why not help them channel that energy into positive action?
Oh, I see.
So instead of feeling overwhelmed by, let's say, climate change, maybe they get involved with a local environmental group.
Hmm.
Or if they're passionate about social justice, maybe they volunteer at a community organization. You know,
That's such a great idea. It's like taking all that intellectual energy and turning it into a force for good in the world.
exactly. And it can be so empowering for them to actually see that they can make a difference. You remember that example from the article? The student who organized that recycling drive at their school. That's a perfect example.
Oh, yeah.
They saw a problem, felt compelled to do something, and then took those concrete steps to create change.
That's such an inspiring example. It shows how with the right support, intellectual overexcitability, it can actually be harnessed to make a real impact.
Absolutely. But, even with all of that, there's one more crucial element we need to think about
Right.
when it comes to supporting these folks. It's about nurturing a sense of humility and a growth mindset.
Okay, tell me more about that. Why is that so important?
Well, imagine, right, you're a child who constantly grasps things faster than your peers,
Hmm.
always asking those big, challenging questions.
Hmm.
Seems to have this endless supply of knowledge.
Yeah.
It's easy to see how that could lead to a sense of, well, maybe superiority, maybe even arrogance, if it's not balanced with other qualities.
You're right. You're right. It's like
Yeah.
they need to be reminded that intelligence is just one piece of the puzzle. There's so much more to being a well-rounded person.
Exactly. It's about helping them cultivate humility.
Hmm.
Recognizing that everyone has strengths. There's always more to learn.
Mm.
And that true intelligence, it includes things like empathy and kindness and collaboration. And then there's fostering that growth mindset,
Hmm.
that belief that abilities can be developed through hard work. It's not just something you're born with.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about nurturing the whole person, not just, their intellectual capacity.
Precisely. It's about helping them become not just brilliant thinkers, but compassionate, well-rounded individuals.
Wow. We've covered so much ground already, and it's clear there's a lot more to explore.
Definitely.
I'm definitely looking forward to diving into those other overexcitabilities and future deep dives. But for now, let's bring it back to intellectual overexcitability. For our listeners, what's the key takeaway here? What do we really want them to understand about this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that intellectual overexcitability, it's a powerful force.
Mhm.
It's not just about being smart. It's about having this deep passion for knowledge and experiencing the world in this really unique way.
Yeah,
And with the right support, it can be a source of incredible strength and inspiration.
beautifully put. And for you listening, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with a question to ponder.
Oh, Alexis.
Could you, or maybe someone you know, have intellectual overexcitability? Think back to the traits we talked about today, that thirst for knowledge, that laser focus, that tendency to, go down those rabbit holes of information.
Hmm.
Maybe, just maybe, you'll recognize a spark of yourself in this fascinating concept. We'll be back soon to explore even more, but until then, keep those minds buzzing and those questions flowing.
Love it. This whole conversation about intellectual overexcitability, it really reminds me of something important, this whole concept of neurodiversity.
Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about how those connect.
Well, we talk a lot about diversity in terms of race and gender and culture, but neurodiversity is really just as important.
Mm.
It's this idea that there's no one right way for a brain to work.
Yeah.
Just like a garden thrives on having all these different kinds of plants, right?
Hmm.
Our world is enriched by all the unique ways that each of us thinks and learns.
Yeah, I love that analogy. It's so true. And it makes me think, intellectual overexcitability is just one example of how our brains can be wired differently,
Right.
leading to, unique strengths, but also, maybe unique challenges.
Exactly. And when we can really embrace that neurodiversity, we create a much more inclusive and supportive environment for everyone.
Yeah.
Especially those who might learn or process information a little differently.
Hmm.
It kind of shifts our focus away from trying to fix or normalize people to really appreciating and celebrating those unique perspectives.
That's a huge shift in thinking. Okay, so we've talked about the signs, we've talked about support, but I am curious. are there potential downsides or challenges that can come with this trait?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes. Like any personality characteristic, intellectual overexcitability can have its challenges. For instance, these individuals, they often struggle with perfectionism,
Mm.
setting really high standards for themselves,
Hmm.
driven by that desire for knowledge and understanding.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see how that passion for getting things right could backfire a little.
Exactly. They
Yeah.
might overthink things,
Yeah.
get lost in the details, have a hard time making a decision because they're constantly analyzing every possible outcome.
Mm.
It's like their minds are always searching for that perfect solution,
Hmm.
which can be exhausting,
Yeah.
even paralyzing sometimes.
And that makes me think of something I read in one of the articles you shared. And it talked about how this intensity, it can even impact their sleep.
Oh, absolutely. It's like their brains never really shut off, even when they're trying to relax.
Yeah.
Lying awake at night, their mind's just racing with ideas and questions.
It's so true.
And all that mental activity, it can lead to fatigue and difficulty focusing during the day.
It's a trade-off in a way. It's not just about being smart. It's about managing the intensity of that and finding those healthy ways to channel all that mental energy.
Right.
So what are some of the ways that you've seen people kind of successfully navigate that?
That's a great question. One thing that can be incredibly helpful is, well, finding those outlets for all that energy and curiosity. Think back to what we were talking about before, channeling that awareness into positive action,
Mm-hmm.
providing opportunities for them to really explore their passions. Could be creative pursuits, academic challenges, or even just engaging in those meaningful causes that they care about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, giving them those constructive ways to channel all of that energy.
Exactly. And, in addition to finding those outlets, it's also super important to help them develop strategies for managing their thoughts and their emotions.
Okay.
Things like mindfulness, relaxation techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Therapy can even be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Just learning how to quiet that mental chatter,
Mm.
finding those moments of calm in the midst of all that.
Those are such valuable tools for anyone, really, but
Yeah.
especially for someone with this trait. It's like giving them a toolkit to navigate the challenges that come with that intellectual capacity.
Precisely. And speaking of tools, another important aspect of support is helping them find their communities. Connect with other people who share similar experiences.
Oh, that's so important. Feeling seen and understood.
Right.
Not feeling like you're the only one who experiences the world this way.
Exactly. So support groups, online forums,
Mm-hmm.
even just having a few close friends who really get it. It can make all the difference. It creates that sense of belonging and normalizes the experience. Saying, hey, you're not alone. This way of thinking, it's valuable. And there are others out there who see the world like you do.
I love that. What I really love about this conversation is that it's not just about managing challenges, it's about empowering these individuals to embrace their unique strengths.
You're absolutely right. It's about recognizing that intellectual overexcitability, it's a gift. It's a different way of experiencing the world, a way of thinking and feeling that can be both a source of joy and a catalyst for positive change.
That is beautifully put. So, as we move forward in this deep dive, I'm curious to explore how this gift, how it can be nurtured and supported, not just on an individual level, but within families, schools, communities. What are some of the ways we can create environments that celebrate neurodiversity and help these folks thrive?
That's a wonderful question. It brings us to a really crucial point. Too often our education systems and even families, they're geared toward this one-size-fits-all approach.
Mm.
And that can leave people with intellectual overexcitability feeling misunderstood or even stifled.
Yeah, I can see that if they're constantly being told to, slow down, be quiet, fit in.
Exactly. It can be so frustrating and discouraging.
Mm.
So it's about shifting our mindset from trying to make them normal,
Mm-hmm.
right, to creating spaces where that way of thinking and learning is actually valued and celebrated.
It's like switching from a mindset of limitation to a mindset of possibility.
Exactly.
What are some of the concrete ways we can do that? Like, what does that look like in practice?
Well, one really important step is simply being aware of the signs, recognizing that it's not a flaw. It's not a problem to be fixed.
Yeah.
It's about understanding that intense curiosity, the need to question, the deep thinking, these are all valuable assets.
It's so simple, but it's such a profound point. Shifting from seeing these traits as something to be managed to seeing them as strengths.
Absolutely. And once we've made that shift, we can actually start creating learning environments that really cater to their unique needs.
Okay.
So, for example, instead of just presenting information in a linear way, the classic textbook style,
Mm-hmm.
why not encourage more project-based learning where they can really dive deep into a topic that excites them?
Yeah, give them that freedom to explore, to research, to ask their own questions.
Exactly. And think about assessment, too. Instead of relying solely on standardized tests, the ones that really just measure rote
Mm.
memorization,
Right.
why not include more creative projects, presentations, debates where they can showcase their understanding and those unique perspectives?
I love that. It's about recognizing those different ways to show intelligence and understanding.
Right. And along those same lines, it's so important to give them opportunities for intellectual stimulation, for challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to push them. Present them with those complex problems,
Mm.
the ones that require critical thinking and creative problem solving.
Meeting them where they are and then giving them the support to reach even higher.
Exactly. And, supporting these folks isn't just about academics. It's also about nurturing their emotional and social development.
Oh, that's such a great point. Tell me more about that. How can we support them in those areas?
Well, remember we talked about how that heightened sensitivity can make them more prone to things like anxiety, depression.
Mm-hmm.
Creating a safe and supportive environment where they feel comfortable expressing those feelings is key.
Yeah, it's about giving them that space to be themselves, with all their intensity, all their complexities, and not feel judged.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's also about helping them develop healthy ways to cope with stress, with feeling overwhelmed. Things like mindfulness exercises, spending time in nature,
Mm-hmm.
engaging in creative outlets. These can all be super beneficial for finding that balance.
Yeah, it's like giving them that toolkit for navigating those emotional ups and downs.
Precisely. And just as important, it's about fostering their social skills,
Mm-hmm.
helping them build meaningful connections.
It's so funny you say that because I was just reading in one of the articles about how some individuals, they can struggle with those social interactions.
Right.
Like they might feel like they don't fit in.
It's common. They might have a hard time relating to people who don't necessarily share their passions or interests.
Yeah, they're on a different wavelength sometimes.
Exactly. And that highlights the need for those inclusive environments,
Mm-hmm.
the ones where they feel accepted and valued, even if they are a bit different.
It's about celebrating those unique perspectives and helping them to see that those differences are strengths.
Absolutely. And giving them opportunities to connect with others who share those passions. That might be through clubs or groups or even online communities where they can engage in conversations and just share their ideas with like-minded folks.
Yeah, finding their tribe, the people who really get them.
Exactly. One of the beautiful things about intellectual overexcitability is its potential to actually contribute to the world in really positive ways.
Oh, that's a great point. We've talked about the challenges, but let's not forget about the potential. Tell me more about how that unique way of thinking can benefit the world.
Well, think about it. These individuals, they're often driven by a desire to understand the world and to make a real difference. They're natural problem solvers, innovators, creative thinkers. They're the ones who challenge the way things are, push those boundaries, come up with new and innovative solutions to those really complex problems.
It's like they have that drive to make the world a better place built right in.
Yeah.
They see those flaws, the things that could be improved, and they want to do something about it.
Exactly. And if we can create environments that really nurture those talents and support their growth, imagine the incredible contributions they can make.
It's exciting to think about.
They have the potential to be groundbreaking scientists, visionary artists, compassionate leaders.
This is so inspiring. It's about recognizing that potential in each person and creating those pathways for them to flourish.
Absolutely. As we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listener with a question to ponder.
Okay.
Think about your own experiences, your relationships, your community. Where do you see that spark of intellectual overexcitability?
Mhm.
And how can you play a role in nurturing and supporting that spark, both in yourself and in others? Because when we create a world that embraces neurodiversity, we all benefit from that incredible richness and diversity of thought and experience.
That's a beautiful thought to end on. We'll be back soon to continue exploring this, but until then, keep those minds curious and those hearts open.
It really is amazing to think about that ripple effect when we create those spaces that celebrate neurodiversity. We're not just supporting those individuals, we're really nurturing a whole ecosystem of creativity and innovation.
I completely agree. It's about recognizing that diversity in all its forms is a source of strength. And when it comes to intellectual overexcitability, we've only just scratched the surface of its potential impact.
I was thinking about something you said earlier about how individuals with this trait can challenge the status quo and really push boundaries. And it made me think about like history.
Oh.
What if we looked at this concept, not just on an individual level, but on a collective level?
That's a fascinating thought. What do you mean? Well, think about historical eras like the Renaissance or the Enlightenment.
Oh, okay.
Those periods just bursting with new ideas, discoveries, artistic expression. Could those societies, in a way, embody a collective form of intellectual overexcitability?
Now, that is a very intriguing idea. Applying this lens to different historical movements, analyzing how this kind of intense intellectual energy might have shaped those periods.
Exactly. I mean, it really makes you wonder if certain events or breakthroughs could be reinterpreted through this framework. Could the rapid advancements in, science, art, philosophy during those times have been fueled by a collective surge of intellectual overexcitability?
It's definitely a question worth exploring. And it raises all sorts of interesting questions about, the relationship between individual and collective consciousness, the nature of creativity, the factors that drive those big societal transformations.
Yeah, it's like we're opening up this whole new dimension of understanding how history unfolds. And speaking of unfolding, I'm curious to kind of delve into the impact of this on specific fields. For example, how might intellectual overexcitability manifest in scientific discovery or artistic creation?
That's a great question. Think about the scientists who dedicate years, or sometimes decades, to unraveling a particular mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Or the artists who pour their hearts and souls into their work, just driven by this need to express themselves.
Yeah, they're the ones who are constantly pushing those boundaries of what's known, what's possible, always seeking new knowledge, new ways to express themselves, new ways to understand the world. Could that drive, that relentlessness, be a hallmark of intellectual overexcitability?
It certainly makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That deep passion for knowledge, the curiosity, the need to create. I mean, these are all qualities that we see time and time again in folks who make those groundbreaking discoveries or who create those incredible works of art.
It makes me think about some of the greatest minds in history, the Einsteins, the Picassos, the Marie Curies.
Yeah.
I mean, could they have experienced the world through this lens?
It's an intriguing possibility. And if so, it really challenges us to rethink our whole understanding of genius, of talent, of giftedness, right? Maybe these qualities aren't just about innate ability. Maybe it's also about a particular way of engaging with the world, a way of thinking and feeling that's characterized by, by intensity, by curiosity, by a deep passion for understanding.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of what we thought we knew about human potential and discovering all these new possibilities.
And that's what makes this field so fascinating. It's not about labeling people or putting them in these neat little boxes. It's about appreciating the diversity of human experience, recognizing all the different ways there are to be brilliant.
So well said. And for our listeners, as we wrap up this deep dive into intellectual overexcitability, I really hope you're leaving with a sense of wonder, maybe a spark of curiosity, and maybe even a new perspective on yourself or someone you know.
I hope so too. And remember, this trait, in all its intensity and all its complexity, it really is a gift. Embrace it, nurture it, and use it to make the world a more vibrant, insightful, inspiring place.
It has been such a pleasure exploring this topic with you. And for everyone listening, keep those minds engaged, those questions flowing, and those passions burning bright. Until next time, happy exploring.